So it was a good year, maybe even a little bit more, before I officially went out on my own. But here's exactly what happened. So for the next 6 months, I did research. Like I said, I bought the books, I ordered the digital courses, I started to really get in that world. I started to go to events with other entrepreneurs to learn about what they were doing. So that was the first 6 months. Then I started my side hustle for the next 6 months. Now, during that time of starting that side hustle, I told myself, okay, I need to choose an exit date, because if I do not choose a date that I'm going to leave, I will never leave, because I was terrified to leave my job. I had only ever known a 9-to-5 job. So going out on my own, that sounded wildly irresponsible, but again, I wanted that freedom. So I chose a date 6 months from that point. So I gave myself another 6 months, which equaled a year from that one meeting. And I said, I'm leaving on this date. I put it on a Post-it note and I put it on a mirror that I looked at every single day while I was getting ready. And I didn't just look at the date. What I did is I looked at it and I asked the question, what do I need to do today to move me closer to that date? Because this is happening. I learned early on that the only way to really respect and love yourself is to keep the commitments you make to yourself. And so I said, I can't throw this date out and not do it. So I said, I'm gonna do it. So every single day I thought, what do I need to do today? Do I need to make a call? Do I need to read that book, listen to that podcast, whatever it might be? So that was something that I was doing. And then in addition, I said, I'm going to save tons of money before I leave my job, because I'm a worrier and I want security. So I'm gonna save tons of money, which probably looked like 6 months of maybe living. I don't know how the heck I thought I was going to do that, but I had goals. I did not save that money. The day I left my job at Tony Robbins, I had maybe a month's worth of living expenses in my bank account. My husband at the time was a general contractor, and he wasn't making that much money. So it's not like we had a big nest egg, but I knew I wanted freedom more than anything. I wanted to work when I wanted to work, where I wanted to work, how I wanted to work. I didn't want to be on someone else's time or someone else's dime. I wanted to call the shots. So knowing what I wanted, like having a very clear why, is what propelled me, even though I didn't have a big nest egg, even though I wasn't really sure how I was going to do this. And I had 2 clients at the time. So I didn't have everything figured out, but I knew if I don't go now, I'm never going to go. The day I left the San Diego offices, I was driving out in my little car and the Beatles' Here Comes the Sun came on the radio. And I thought, this is a sign. This is all going to work out. This is going to be amazing. And then the next 2 years were the hardest years of my life. The first day, I was working from home, which I was so excited to do, and I was in my little kitchen in a tiny little condo in San Diego, and I looked around and thought, what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. I was so used to having a boss and being told what to do and working with a team, and I looked around and nobody's there, and I had a company that wasn't really making any money yet, and I was terrified. But at the same time, I kept going back to my why. I wanted to call the shots, so I had to figure this out. So for the first year, I hustled to get clients. Again, doing social media for small businesses, doing a little consulting around marketing, but essentially I was a service-based business. And so for the first 2 years, that's all I did. Now, to go back a little bit, at that fateful meeting of those guys around the table, many of them had digital courses. And I learned about that, and Tony had digital courses, and I got to work on them. So in my mind, I thought, I'm going to leave my 9-to-5 job, and I'm going to create digital courses and teach other people about marketing and social media. The problem was, I didn't know how to create a digital course on my own, let alone market it. I had 0 social media following, 0 people on my email list. So I was starting from scratch. And so I needed to make money. My husband was not going to be able to cover all of our expenses, so it was essential. So I just hustled and I got a bunch of clients and I did their social media. I essentially created a business I absolutely hated. I often say that instead of having one big boss, literally, Tony's a huge guy, I had 8 little mini bosses telling me what to do. My clients became my bosses, literally calling me at all hours, telling me what they wanted. I said yes to everything. I was the quintessential yes girl to everything they wanted because I was desperate. I thought if I lose this client, I might not be able to put food on the table, which was way dramatic, but that's the story I told myself. And so yeah, I created a business I absolutely hated. And 2 years in, I looked around and thought, this is what entrepreneurship is. This is nothing what I thought it was going to be. I thought I'd be sipping Mai Tais on the beach with a laptop in my lap. And that is not what it was like. What happened was that I decided in that first year I was going to do a product launch and I was going to create this digital course that I wanted to create from the get-go. So I created a digital course teaching people how to launch books using social media. The problem is I've never launched a book in my life. So I literally was teaching something that I should not have been teaching. Again, it came from desperation of just wanting to be known for something. And so I launched this course and I made a whopping $267. The problem is the course was $297. I didn't even cover the cost of one unit. After you backed out a few $1,000s in expenses, I made $267. And I cried every day for a week. I cried every day, didn't want to get out of bed until my husband Hobie said, babe, you have to stop this. Like, you have to get it together. And I said, I'm going to have to grovel back for my job. I'm going to have to beg Tony Robbins to take me back. I am not cut out to be an entrepreneur. This was a horrible idea. This is not working out. And he said, you burned the boats. You said you burned the boats and you were going to storm the island. You cannot go back. That's not even an option. And he said, stop talking about going back. And that was a really big lesson I learned early on, to stop tethering myself to my past. And that was not going to be my future. And so as much as maybe they would have taken me back, I had to take it off the table. So at that point, after a week of crying, I stopped talking about maybe I'm not cut out for this, maybe I have to go back to my job. And instead I said, I got to figure this out. So I went back to the drawing board and I started finding small ways to make money online, teaching marketing, helping people with their marketing, kind of a bunch of the same for the next year. And then I launched my second digital course. And when I launched my second digital course, still didn't make tons of money, maybe $10,000, but that was a lot of money for me at the time. And I thought, I'm gonna figure this out. This is going to work. So really what I did in that moment is I just kept going because I kept coming back to that why. I wanted to be my own boss more than anything. In the second year, I sold my second digital course and it did okay. And it was the third year where everything started to click. So here's what happened. I decided that I was going to create a digital course that I was going to stick with, meaning I wasn't going to continue to create something new. I was going to create a course. No matter what happened, I was going to figure out how to take that same course and do it better the next time. And so the first time I launched my third digital course, I made $30,000 in a week. I knew in that moment, I remember where I was sitting, what I was wearing, how I was feeling. Like $30,000 in a week was amazing to me. And I remember looking at my husband Hobie and saying, you will never believe what just happened. And I told him I made $30,000 on this launch, and he looked at me like I had two heads. He didn't understand the online world. He didn't understand really what I was doing, but he's like, is this legit? Like, what the heck? And I said, of course it is. But in that moment, I realized, wait a second, if I can make $30,000, I can make $300,000. I knew I could go bigger as long as I stuck with that course and continued to make it better. One of the things I learned while I was working with Tony Robbins is you do not need to keep reinventing the wheel. The smartest entrepreneurs figure out what works and they keep getting better at it versus chasing the next shiny thing and starting over here and there. Starting over is what slows you down. And so if you find something that works even just a little bit, but you double down on it and make it better, that's where you can scale a business. And that's what I learned by my third digital course in my third year. And so that's when everything started to change. By year 3 is when things started to really take off, and I started to feel as though this is working. I'm not going to have to go back to a 9-to-5 job. And what I did is I took that product that was a success and I launched it again and again and again. And so I continued to launch it for about 2 years. And the last time I launched it, it was a $900,000 launch. So I went from $30,000 the first time I launched it to a specific one launch, $950,000 to be exact. And so things really took off over a 2-year period once I hit year 3. And I think the magic there was that I stuck with something. I was teaching Facebook marketing in this digital course, so I became known for Facebook marketing. There's something to be said about being known for something online, because it's a very noisy space where you can get lost in the mix like that. And for people to say, who can teach me Facebook marketing? And my name was maybe in the top 5, that made a difference. And the only reason it was in the top 5 is because I continued to launch and launch and launch the same product. And so that changed everything for me. And once I started to get momentum, the business was almost at $1 million year. I had almost hit $1 million year about 4 years in. So I was 4 years in, and that year I think it was $915,000 in revenue. And that's when I decided to take on a partner.